Okay, ready to start when you are.
Cool. So hello everyone. My name is Luke Boxall. You may have seen the Instagram post. I am actually still in the States at the minute, so that's slightly wrong. So it's nice and sunny outside for me at the moment, not rubbing in too much. But yeah, so as you've probably seen as well from the title of the call, I'm an easyJet MPL Cadet pilot, and I'll talk about sort of what I've done to get to where I am now, sort of things that you can do as well, specifically within RAFAC, because obviously everyone here is in the RAFAC, and then I'll sort of go on to a Q&A at the end. I'll not take too long on the slides initially, just in case there are quite a lot of questions, because I'd rather answer sort of specific questions than just sit here and ramble for an hour and 15 minutes, and believe me, I could do that. So if everyone's happy, I'll just flick along to the next page, which is a little bit about me. So like I said, I've been an easyJet MPL Cadet pilot since January 2024. So 16 months from now. It's gone pretty quick, but also it's been some hard work. So I applied in April 2023. Got accepted onto the program in July 2023, and then didn't start until 2024. So I had quite a big gap between sort of applying, getting onto the course, and then starting the actual course. So like I said, currently in Phoenix, Arizona, getting a nice suntan. Again, not to rub it in too much. So I'm originally from the northeast of England. You might be able to tell by the accent. If you can't, then I'm hiding it well. Trying to make myself readable. So I'm from a town called Peterlee and went to a squadron in Seaham, which is 1338 Squadron. So yes, that's about my sort of cadet background. I graduated from Quake 15, so that's the Qualified Aerospace Instructors course. For anyone that isn't certain, I didn't run this year, but it did run last year, so there was Quake 16, and that's all about sort of aerospace things, different. So there's like flight sims, there's ATC. It's a fantastic course, but I'll get onto that shortly because I've got a little bit more to sort of talk about that. So that's what I've done with the Air Cadets. I got Lord Lieutenant's Cadet for County Durham in 2024, and I also got selected for ACPS, which is the Air Cadet Pilot Scheme or Scholarship. I'm not quite sure what the S stands for. But unfortunately, the school that was with was Takeoff Aviation in Dundee, and that went bust in 2023, I think. So there were some issues there finding a new flight school. So I didn't actually get to do my ACPS before I started my training, unfortunately. But for anyone that applies to it and gets onto it, I'm sure it's fantastic. It looks fantastic, and it's it's a really good thing to have on your CV, and also just the experience as well of getting to do some flying. So that's really good. Just to preface as well with the Q&A, I'll answer all the questions at the end. So if you have any questions throughout and you sort of stick them in the chat, I'll see them all at the end, and we'll sort of work through those. But yeah, so we'll move on to the RAFAC specifically. Things that I've done, things that you can do if you want to be a pilot, whether it be military pilot, whether it be commercial pilot. Everyone has different sort of interests, because it's not just one singular pathway. There's loads of different things you can do, and it really is a fantastic career. So the first thing is probably quite obvious, is air experience flying or gliding. So if you haven't done that yet, if you're fairly new, absolutely get your name down to do that, because it's fantastic, and it also really gives you an insight into what flying is like if it's for you. There's a lot of people that sort of haven't flown before when we come to Phoenix. So we do the whole 10 months of ground school, and then people come out here. And a lot of people, more than what you would think, get airsick. So it's quite funny because everyone's sort of in their uniform or, trained to be pilots, and then they fly for the first time and they actually can't fly it because they're too busy holding a sick bag up to their face, because it's a different sensation. So absolutely do that if you can. Just to make sure it's for you, and obviously, people get over some ginger biscuits is the motto, which I think is just an excuse to have some biscuits. But yeah, so absolutely do that. Gliding as well. I only got to do that once, but again, it was absolutely fantastic. Really weird feeling because you obviously have no engine, so you get winched up into the air. They release the winch, bit of a clunk, and then you just sort of fly around for a little bit, and then you start climbing, but there's no engine, so you just sort of find thermals and climb higher, which is also a bit weird. Aerospace camps, things like NASC, so that's in the summer. National Air and Space Camp, that's really good. One of the things it's really good for is they have an industry day. So if you are interested in becoming a pilot and you maybe getting sort of the age that you'd be looking to apply to do things like that, or even if not, even if you just want ideas, that's a really good day to go to. Different like airlines and things there that you can talk to, and just people that have sort of had their own experiences that you can get stories from things. So that's really good. But I did that, so through Quake, I did NASC, so I volunteered as a QAI. So I didn't go as a cadet, but that was really good for me to also go to the industry day. So it's never too late to go, because you speak to all these different people, and I think I'd applied by that point. But yeah, if I hadn't, it would have been, it was still fantastic. And there's things like an air show and everything, so that's a really good thing to do. And also, there's so many different aerospace activities that really helps as well, with sort of gauging your interest, seeing what parts you're interested in. There's not really many places that you can do things like air traffic control, but NASC is one of those. So if you think you might want to be an air traffic controller, there's not as much opportunity to sort of see if that's actually something you find fun. NASC is a place where you could do that. So that's actually really good as well for that. Obviously, the qualified aerospace instructors course. So yeah, that's a big one. Like highlight by far of my cadet career. I loved every second of that, and I think that I knew that I wanted to do that pretty early on. So I would keep bugging my OC about sort of Quake applications and things, and I'd be getting the warning orders and reading through them before I was even old enough to apply to it, I think, which potentially could have been annoying, but did it in the end. And yeah, that was great fun. Everything, sort of all the modules, really insightful, really helped develop CV skills. But as well, it's just a really good experience, especially the graduation week. The grad dinner is like something that I've never experienced before, and probably never will experience something similar to that again, which was fantastic. But yeah, it's a really good course to do, makes you look great, and also you have a great time. So it's a win-win. Like I mentioned before as well, the Air Cadet Pilot Scheme is something that I applied for, got onto, didn't get to do it, which is a bit annoying, but again, fantastic thing to do. Yeah, really good, and again helps you sort of gauge whether that's for you, because I think you can do a solo flight on that as well, so that's perfect. But also, I kind of want to stress that even if you really want to be a pilot like I did, it's really is shooting.
I think it's probably just having a little bit of a technical issue. Just while he is just offline, let's have a quick chat to you about Quake, because obviously currently Quake is in the middle of a reorganisation. It is currently having loads of work done to it to ensure that when it goes back out again, it's going to be new and in line with all the things that the RAF want cadets to be able to do. So there have been a few rumours that it's not going to come back, but that is completely untrue. So at the moment, they're just in massive development. So we're hoping that more details will be coming out about that soon. Maybe not necessarily for this academic year, whereas I hope it will be, then potentially next academic year. So while we're waiting for Luke to come back on, has anyone got any questions with regards to Quake? I think Luke's managing just about to get back on, hopefully. Because I'm happy to answer that. I have worked on Quake for a few years. Will they remain the same as before? Potentially. I can't see the reason why it would change, but obviously that information will go out as soon as there is details about that. But at the moment, it looks like there's going to be a bit more broad than it was before, a bit more in depth than it was before, and like I say, in line with what the RAF would like people to be able to do, in line for possibly looking at careers within the RAF as well. So I don't know if the requirements will change, but I would assume it's always been fairly rigorous in the first place. So I'd assume you would be prepared for any kind of application. Just trying to see if Luke's coming back on. Like I say, he did say he was in Arizona, and I think there were a few potential issues with him connecting from the States. Anyone got any other questions? Would Quake be beneficial for becoming a pilot? I think there are a lot of things you do within Quake, and I think with some additional units as well, definitely it wouldn't be a bad thing to do Quake at all. Teach you to be a much more confident person. All the delivery of all the like blue wings, etc. But actually looking at potentially delivering things like the bronze wings as well. There are lots of opportunities for you to develop your skills. And when we get cadets at the beginning of Quake, usually quite quiet, quite unassuming, but by the time they finish, you could put them in a room with anybody and they can deliver to anybody. They're confident, and obviously Luke discussed grad dinner. They're sat in grad dinner with air marshals and with the station directors, etc., station commanders rather, and they're holding their own. They're having those discussions. And if anyone was on the talk with Air Marshal Phil Sturley, he said at the end of the day, if you want to be a pilot, you need to keep working to become a pilot. Don't let anything put you off. Keep working hard and making sure that if that's your goal, work towards your goal. Don't let people put you off. If you don't get on ACPS, it doesn't matter. Just try to do as much as you can. Try to get on every camp you can get on. Try to develop your skills as much as you can. Be that leader within the cadets. Anytime you apply for things, such as becoming a pilot, they're all skills they're looking for, those transferable skills. Ewan's put, is it better to go straight into commercial training, or would it be better to go to uni? If so, what course would be recommended? I don't know. If you'd have been, we'll wait for Luke to add to this one, but if you'd have been on the call with Phil, the Air Marshal, he went to university and studied aeronautical engineering because he felt for him he could be more aware of what was going on with the aircraft. So if there was an issue, he could report that back to the engineering or grounds team, and he had some insider knowledge rather than him just saying, well, it doesn't work, this light's come on, you sort it. He was able to give a bit more feedback. But as I say, we'll see what Luke says when he comes back on. Anyone got any more questions about Quake? I'm just hoping that he will be back on soon. Apologies for this. Age requirements for Quake. They're looking at Master Air Cadets, so normally, 16, 17. They're obviously the requirement for you to be away for full weekends, the requirement for you to be able to travel on your own. So I would say at least 16. Majority of the cadets were 17, maybe some of them were 18, but you're thinking to a certain extent of how much time are you going to apply that knowledge back to delivery on your squadron, your wings, regions, etc. So I think the minimum age requirements before were 16. Is it Erin? Have you got a question? Would Quake be more beneficial than university? No, definitely doesn't replace going to university at all. Quake is it's a development course. It's a development of your skills within RAFAC. It's a delivery, gets you used to delivering to people. It builds your confidence, makes you a different all-round cadet, but it doesn't replace university. And I wouldn't say necessarily for becoming a commercial pilot. Commercial pilots, I think sometimes the luck of the draw. If you're applying for like the easyJet Cadet system or British Airways or any of those, then obviously it's the look of when you apply, can you get access to the course? There's only so many places. You've just got to be persistent. You've just got to keep applying. It's not something you're going to get just if you apply once. You just need to keep trying. How regularly does ACPS applications come out? They come out every year. They come out, I'm pretty sure that, I'm just trying to think when the applications came out this year, around potentially either the end of the year or the beginning of the year, but they get sent out directly to your OC. And from there, they nominate people to go forward, possibly to wings and to regions where people are selected through. What's the cost to go on Quake? I don't think it's particularly high. It has a preset course costs, but it's not particularly high, and it's been designed to make sure that it's not inaccessible. Costs like your travel, etc., are covered by obviously by RAFAC. And I think might have been £150 for the whole course. I'm pretty sure it wasn't particularly high, but if there are financial considerations, it's possible to look at that, and there's possible that potentially could be funded as well. Where and when is Industry Day? So Industry Day runs our Air and Space Camp on the 20th of August. It's held at Sileston. And obviously squadrons will get invited to bring cadets, particularly ones which are more local, but it is possible to bring cadets from further out if there is some kind of transport going on. Are you asking me whereabouts is Quake Finley? It's not necessarily depending if you're in north or south. The current design of it is that so many were held at Inskip in the north and so many were held at Boscombe Down in the south. But potentially that might change. We're looking at more regional training to make it more accessible, but that's obviously down to the new requirements, and that's currently in decision and in application at the moment. I haven't got the new guidelines for anything. I just know it's going to be back up and running, and they're working on that to make it more accessible. I think Luke is obviously having issues connecting. Oscar, you've asked about requirements for the scholarship. Are we talking about Air Cadet Pilot Scholarship? What specific scholarship are we talking about? If you want to add another question, or yeah, ACPS. Okay, so the requirements previously for ACPS, other than age, so you were meant to be 18, and that's where it becomes really challenging. So you were meant to be 18 because you are unsupervised in hotels. So because you're away for up to 3 weeks, they've got to ensure that you're safe. So you had to be 18. In the past, you needed to have completed, I think, silver gliding, or you needed to have completed a series of things. They quite liked, you needed to be a minimum of a leading cadet. I think, don't quote me on that. It's potentially, I haven't got the requirements in front of me, but I know some of the restrictions were changed slightly because people were struggling to get onto any kind of flying. So obviously, they did bend some of the requirements slightly because people were struggling to hit the requirements that they were asking for. We've got a hand up. So Alfie, you got a question? You can put your microphone on. Or type a question, whichever. Sorry, Alfie, what A levels do we do for? Only got half of the question then, I think. Give me 1 second. For commercial pilots. I would suggest that if you are considering looking at a commercial pilot route, directly do some research on the individual companies and what their requirements are. I'm sure they'll be slightly different from each other. Some might not even require A levels, but I would suggest that you do some research. Go directly to the easyJet website, look at the Speedbird program, obviously for British Airways. If you've got an Irish passport, you might even be able to apply for that, the Aer Lingus one. So there are other ones that can be applied for. Is it for certain airlines or any? They have their own individual setups. It's been a new thing where they've been doing the scholarship so that you get your training technically at a reduced amount. I think eventually you will, obviously you will pay it back in some respects. Might be a reduced wage, etc. I don't think it's entirely for free because obviously commercial pilots, the actual training for commercial pilots in the past was really expensive. And to try and make it more accessible, they went through the cadet scheme, so you got a slightly reduced wage, and obviously then that paid towards your training. There's another question on this. Let me just have a quick look. Languages are always good. Obviously, you're in support of being told physics and maths. I would have thought physics and maths would be good A levels, but again, I would check the websites of the particular recruitments. Languages are always going to be good. If you're traveling or you're doing anything with any other nation other than the UK, if you can speak another language, it's always going to be beneficial. Always going to be beneficial, regardless of what you decide you want to do. Anyone got any other questions? I'm just going to try and see if I can get Luke back on. I tend to ask for... Sorry, I just missed that. Oh, right. So, yeah, mostly airlines don't ask for specific A levels. They just tend to ask for 5 GCSEs, including maths and English. But A levels in maths and physics, you can't go wrong. It's from CI Thornton. I would absolutely agree with that. They just want a basic level of, they want at least a decent level of education. And obviously on top of that, if you've got additional things, that's always going to be a benefit. Is there any age requirement for National Air and Space? And if so, what is it? I'm just trying to think about the cadets that I've got going. Maybe possibly 15, 14, 15, but again, that comes out every year. You just got to get your name down when the applications come out for it. You need to push your squadrons to be checking the messages and checking to make sure that they're checking for any kind of opportunities that are out there and things that you can get signed up to do. Next year, I'm choosing my options for GCSE. What options would be best for commercial pilots? Obviously, the majority of your base GCSEs, maths, English, sciences, are a good set of options regardless. But anything additional, I would always suggest that you go for, if you can do a language, study a language. If not, you just want to do the best you can do in the subjects that you pick. In my other role, I'm a head of careers. And our suggestion is always pick subjects that you enjoy doing, you do well in, and ultimately that reflects really well on you. So when you're applying for things, you have the best grades that you could get. What is the suggested GCSE results for the best opportunity, and will it affect my application? I would say that probably they're looking for a minimum of maybe 5s and 6s. That's usually your base expectation on when you're applying for things. Yeah, most looking for 5s in maths and English. British Airways want a 6 in maths and English. So yeah, I would say at least a 5. If you're aiming for 6s, even better. But a lot of the time it's about the person you are as well. So if you've got the base requirements to get in, you need to make sure that you're an interesting person on paper. You've got as many opportunities as you can get. You know, if you desperately want to be a pilot, the advice from the Air Marshal was to find a local airfield and start volunteering and getting involved, even if it's, I'm happy to come out and help wheel out aircraft or local gliding school. Volunteer your time, and then if you volunteer your time, you're more likely to get some free flying or an opportunity to fly. He was saying that the best thing he ever did was get involved with his local gliding school. Alfie, you've got another question? Got your hands up there. Couple of people with their hands up. I'm not sure if we're restricted so you can't speak on your microphone. I think you can on yours. Just trying to see. Erin, you've got a question? I think you can actually use your microphones. just hands up at the moment. Click back on. No. Erin, have you got a question? No? It looks like Luke's not maybe back on. So unless people have got specific questions that I potentially might be able to answer, then unfortunately we may have to cut this short. Obviously, I've got access to lots of bits of information, but I'm not obviously going to be able to talk to you like Luke and talk to you about his experience within easyJet. And obviously, he did say you might have some issues accessing. We were really optimistic when he got on there to start with, but obviously, he's obviously had some issues with his access. Sergeant Duckett said for GCSEs, would criminology and French be beneficial and are A-levels necessary? A-levels aren't necessary. Depending on the airline, you need to be contacting airlines or going onto their websites and looking for their for their careers information. They advertise it on social media. You need to follow these companies on things like Instagram and Facebook. You need to be following their accounts to see when they're advertising things. Whether criminology would be beneficial, who knows? I would say French is always going to be beneficial as it's a language. Criminology has a mixture of skills, but you need to make sure that you've got a good set of GCSEs. Sam's put, is another language and geography A-level a good option? So we're talking about 2 languages and geography. Again, you would have to look at the websites of the particular places you're considering applying to. At the end of the day, you need to see what their requirements are. And obviously, if they're not bothered specifically about what A-levels you've got, they just want A-levels, then you'll need to find that out specifically from each individual airline. Will glasses affect being a pilot? Again, you need to check the airline's requirements. Everyone's going to be slightly different. It depends what you use your glasses for. I would assume if they're just reading glasses, maybe that would be different, but I would definitely look at what their requirements are. Some of them might want 20/20 vision. Some of them might allow some element of glasses, but you need to have a look at the requirements per different company. I would say that any of the questions that I can't answer, I will get Luke to answer, because obviously I will send them out to him. If you join the RAF, can we go into commercial pilots in the future? I would say quite a lot of RAF pilots going to become commercial pilots or private pilots in the future. Obviously you'll have to do slightly different training, but at the end of the day, there's nothing stopping you looking at becoming a commercial pilot. Even if you join the RAF and not be a pilot, there's nothing stopping you as an individual learning to fly and then applying when you eventually get to that point. I have a friend who applied to the Speedbird program for British Airways, didn't get on the first time, and then he worked as cabin crew for 2 years with British Airways. And then after he did the 2 years of cabin crew, he's now been accepted on the Speedbird program. So don't feel that you can't potentially do something. Oh, it looks like Luke might be back on. How are we doing, Luke? Have we managed to get back on? Not quite yet. There are other programs other than just easyJet. Obviously, like I said, British Airways did the Speedbird program. There are other ones. You've just got to keep your eye out for them. You know, it's down to the fact that you need to research online and you need to find out what the requirements are for each, because they're going to be so different from one place to another. Sam, you put, how do I get started with the programs? Just need to do some research online. Pick an airline, research what they've got going, research what their deadlines are. They massively advertise these programs. They're really keen to get new recruits, and obviously when they release them, they have a short turnaround on them because they want to build the hype and they want you to be interested. Obviously for cadets, you could do any of the sort of synthetic training. If there are bronze wings going in your area, or if they're not going in your area, ask your OC to contact region and find out if there's anywhere else you can go and do bronze wings training and try and build, you know, your actual personal skill. Alfie, you've got another question?
Sorry, I'll just say I am back. I didn't realise that I had
just been slightly winging this for a while.
I dropped out the call there.
I
Yeah,
know.
on my end, I was still in the call, so I'm just chatting away
Oh,
to
yeah,
myself.
you dropped out
But I
ages
am
ago.
back now.
Right, I'll
Right.
pass you back
Yeah,
over
I
to
am
Luke.
back now. Thanks. Do you know whereabouts I was up to?
I think
I'll
no.
just carry on yapping. If not, no, that's all right. So what I'll do is I'll go back to this and I'll just talk about. So I'll just talk about my training so far.
That's fine. Yeah.
As this is what I'm up to, and then I'll start answering questions.
Okay.
So yeah, so apologies for that. But I'm back now. So ground school. So I started my training in 2024. 13 theory subjects, which is the UK sort of standard. Everyone does that. So they're from principles of flight, things that actually do link into your air cadet careers. So principles of flight you do in the air cadets, aircraft general knowledge you do as well. A little bit, I think. Meteorology, so that's quite a new one. That's not really in the cadet syllabus. Things like navigation are. So all of these subjects that I felt like I had a bit of a head start in, because I already had a bit of a base knowledge from the air cadets. So that really helped, sort of to get started. And as well, having only just come out of school doing physics and maths and things, that was a big help with not only the aptitude tests, but also the training as well. So there's people sort of all ages, some people that are over 30 that haven't done anything in school for 10 years plus. And they really sort of struggled more with the math side of things, even just things like rearranging equations. Because it's been so long, that's not second nature to them, whereas it was to me and it was to some of the other young people that have just come out of school. So that is actually a big benefit, to sort of doing it at a young age. But back to the exams, then yeah, they're 10 months, so they do drag a bit. You do it in a 3, 5, 5. So you do 3 at the start, then you do another 3 months of work, 5 exams, another 3 months of work, 5 exams. So the first ones were meteorology, principles of flight, and aircraft general knowledge, which is quite nice to start on 3 because it takes you a bit of time to sort of figure out how you study and sort of the pace that you need to go at. So I thought I knew how to study well, and now we sort of laugh about how we studied at the start, because we would sit through the lessons all day and do 10 practice questions. At the end of the day, it would take us an hour, and we'd think we'd absolutely aced it. We'd think we were great because we'd done 10 questions. We'd gotten half of them right. And after a month or so, there's the exams for principles of flight is 34 questions in an hour and a bit. So at the rate that I was going to start, it would have taken me half the day to do one exam, which we thought was great at first. But and obviously, yeah. So like I said, it takes you a bit of time to figure out how you study, and sort of to get used to the process, because it's a lot of work. You go in, you do the day at CE for me, and then go home or stay at the centre, work to the sort of early evening, go home, have some dinner, maybe watch a bit of telly with your dinner, go to bed, wake up, work again. So there's a lot of work in, and it's quite nice. On my course, you get a week off after each set of exams. It's kind of nice to just sort of wind down, decompress a little bit, have some time not doing ATPLs all the time. Whereas I know some other schools, you sort of go straight into it, which is a bit intense, but also you finish sooner. It only takes 6 months, not 10. So there's sort of pros and cons to both. But yeah, that was my ground school. So I finished it in November 2024, and then came out to Phoenix. Sorry, finished it in October 2024, and then came out to Phoenix in November 2024. So not a big time at all. Sort of between finishing ground school, getting sorted, and then moving out to Arizona, which is currently where I am now. So the flying phase in Arizona is 6 to 7 months of flying. So I've been here since November, so I'm into my single engine instrument phase of flying now. So I've done all the visual things. This is about where I was when I realized that I was no longer in the call, and I was talking to myself. So yeah, we fly out of an airport called Falcon Field, which you can sort of research later if you want. It's extremely busy. So I went up the control tower in January, and they said that Falcon Field is the 15th busiest airport in the US based on aircraft movements. And that includes things like JFK, LAX, San Francisco, so big commercial airports as well, not just general aviation airports and executive private airports. It's incredibly busy. I did the maths and figured out that it would be the second busiest airport in the UK after Heathrow. So it's busier than Gatwick, busier than Manchester by far. So yeah, second busiest after Heathrow, which is quite crazy to think that that's where you do your first flying lessons and your first solos. An airport's so busy, and it is quite stressful at first, because also American air traffic control is very different to European and British air traffic control. So on Quake, on NASC, things like that, you will do, if you go to the aerospace camp and things, you will do air traffic control modules. So that's a really good thing about Quake and the aerospace camp. Again, I'm not quite sure if I said this before and you heard it or if you didn't. But they're the two places in the air cadets really that you will do air traffic control where you wouldn't be able to do it anywhere else. So that's quite an interesting thing to do if you think you might want to be an air traffic controller, because sort of even if you don't do Quake and things and you want to be a pilot, there's other routes that you can go down to do that. You can go and do your own experience flights and things, but to actually experience an air traffic control environment is a lot harder. So that's a benefit of Quake and the National Air and Space Camp. But yeah, so in America, the air traffic control is very different, which was a bit of a weird thing to get used to, because, for example, in the UK, you would get cleared to land when you're next in line. So a plane could be taken off the runway. If there's anything on the runway, you won't get clearance to land. So at Gatwick, for example, it's very common to get cleared to land very late, because one plane will be taken off down the runway with another plane coming in to land behind, and they can't get clearance to land until that other plane is off the runway. In America, totally different. In America, you can get clearance to land. So I did a really weird thing the other week before my first solo. So I say the other week, it was in February or March, and they did a runway change mid-air. So I took off on the 04 runway, flew up and turned around to come to do my circuit, and then they changed the runway, and basically everyone was doing a bit of a conga line and following the edge of the airspace to come and land back on the other runway, which was really weird, because they tell the first plane to do something and then told everyone else to follow them. So if one person did something wrong in the middle, then the people at the back would do it wrong. But I got told that I was number 6 in the queue. So there's 5 planes in front of me, and then I got told that I was cleared to land, which was really weird, because you get told that you're cleared to land, but you're actually not really, because there's still planes landed in front of you and taking off in front of you. Someone else got number 9 cleared to land, which in Europe would absolutely not happen. So that took a bit of getting used to, because then it's sort of, they clear you to land, because then the onus is on you to not land when there's someone else on the runway, or to make sure that you land as the 9th person, which again is quite difficult, because you have to count 8 planes to land before you. So it gives you more work to do, which is quite difficult, and it's very weird, but I'm sure they have their reasons for doing it like that. So that took a bit of getting used to, but first and second solos were fantastic. So I've done 2 so far, and it's just a really, really unique experience, sort of flying a plane without anyone sat there, after you've always had someone sat there, and often someone sat in the back as well, because you have like a flying partner out here. So you will always fly together, you'll always go in together. And unless you're sort of overweight with how much fuel or anything you need to take, and you can't fit both of you in the plane, then you'll always fly together and just watch, because you're sort of getting double the time for nothing. So, but on your solo, you're on your own. So not only do you not have your flying partner in the back or your instructor in the front, so it's quite weird. And I was hoping for an easy one on my solo, but it was quite busy for the first one, and then I had to do a 360 loop on my circuit, which, yeah, I was hoping I wouldn't have to do anything weird, but I did. But yeah, it was good fun. And then just to put into sort of context how busy Falcon Field is, on my second solo, it's worked out that you do, your first one is just 1 lap of the circuit, and the second one is no more than an hour, but basically you have to do an hour across both. So you just do as many circuits as you can in an hour, basically. And I only technically needed to do half an hour, because it had already taken me half an hour in the first one just to do 1 circuit. On the second one, the timer ticked over to half an hour and I hadn't taken off yet. So between starting the engine and 30 minutes passing, I was still waiting on the ground to take off because there was just a huge queue. So yeah, it gets incredibly busy, which I suppose sometimes is a bit of a negative because it means that you actually get less flying time sometimes because it takes you so long to get off the ground. So I only got to do 2 circuits in an hour, which is not very much, but I suppose it is what it is. But yeah, fantastic experience. And now onto instrument flying, so flying things like holding patterns and things like that, which is quite interesting because I was also quite big into flight sim and still am. So I played flight sim a lot back when before I started the course and had more time, and still did quite a lot during ground school on the weekends and things when I had my computer, which I sadly said goodbye to when I moved to Phoenix. But yeah, so that really helped as well because it helps sort of understand things. So if you do flight school for the ground school portion, you'll know a lot more than what you think, or it'll help you sort of with the basics, and then you build on the specifics, which was really good. So another really big benefit to have, and a good hobby to have. And then after I leave here, so after I've done the rest of my instrument flying and the multi-engine flying, I'll then go on to the Airbus simulators back in Gatwick or in Milan. I'm kind of hoping for Milan because I think that'll be quite nice. Nice warm summer with some nice pasta and pizza. But I don't actually really know when we find out which one we're going to. Hopefully soon. But yeah, so that's 4 months of Airbus simulators, which is an incredible thing that you get to do more of during my course because my training is an MPL, which some of you will know what that means, I'm sure. But I can always explain that later on if anyone has any questions. So usually in an aircraft specific, what they call a type rating course, you would do maybe 10 to 12 hours, 16 hours, 10 sims maybe on the Airbus or whatever aircraft you fly to train. Whereas we do more than 100 hours. We do loads of time in the simulator. I think it's like 180 hours altogether, which is a lot of time spent in the Airbus compared to a lot of people on an integrated TPL would spend that extra time in the Piper, which is what we fly out here, the Piper Archer, and then the Piper Seminole for the multi-engine flying. So that's really good because you actually then essentially get to do a lot of your multi-engine stuff in an A320, not in the Seminole, which is, I suppose, more beneficial if you're going to fly a 320, but also it's very cool. But yeah, so overall the course should take 20 to 24 months, start to end. So I'm scheduled to start with easyJet in October this year. So hopefully not long after that I'll be flying passengers. You do like an easyJet induction phase, which is six weeks. So it's really good because it's a sponsored course. You go straight from finishing your training straight into the airline rather than having to apply for jobs and things. So I already have an induction date that I will just finish my training as long as it's on time, and then go straight to excuse me, then go straight to joining the airline and doing airline flying, which is fantastic. Because a lot of people have a big window of time where you have to wait to get a job. But yeah, so that's been my training so far. I've got some pictures which I may as well just show you now instead of showing you at the end. So these are some of the pictures from my flying I could sort of find. As you can imagine, I take a lot of pictures. So every time we're there, I'm just like snapping away at the things. So all the good pictures are buried amongst some random pictures of the ground. But I'll sort of walk through what they are. So the top one, Arizona is known for having a lot of aircraft graveyards.
Luke, we can only see slide 7. We can't see slide 8 that you're talking about.
Oh, can you? Give me a second. Can you see it in this view?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so I'll just show you them like this. So here we have, it's a boneyard in Arizona. So there's loads of airliners and things that have been sort of decommissioned. And I'll make it a bit bigger so you can see. I've got to be a bit technical here. So these are all airliners and things that you can see parked along the sides. And they're all sort of, some of them are from Europe, so there's TUI planes. That's really cool, just sort of flying between that. And then you can see here you've got just a nice sunrise. Flying over a meteor crater that's in the middle of Arizona, which is really cool. Flying over Horseshoe Bend, which I don't even think I'd heard of until I came out here, but it's a bend in the river that leads towards Grand Canyon, which is really cool. And then the Grand Canyon itself. So I did a flight which was flying over the Grand Canyon. So we flew up to a place called Page, and that's basically on the border of Utah. And to get there, you fly over the Grand Canyon at 11,500 feet in a Pier 28, which is high. And especially because it's unpressurized. So if you like your usual flight will have an altitude in the cabin, so the air will be the same as the air at like 6,000 to 8,000 feet usually. That's how thin it would be, and that's obviously 11,500 feet. So it was quite high. But the highlight of not only flying over the Grand Canyon, which was fantastic, but also actually speaking to air traffic control that were based in LA Center. So you actually speak to the controllers that are giving aircraft like arrivals into Las Vegas and things. So you're on this frequency with all of these massive airliners that are flying over, and they're saying, oh, you know, Southwest 2155 Rockstar arrival to Vegas, and you're there in your little Piper, just asking to cross the Grand Canyon. So that was a really cool experience. That, again, like a lot of people sort of, it's a bit of a shame because it is a bit instructor dependent. So some people will have instructors that will do that. Some instructors would rather just stay around Phoenix. And so I was quite lucky with that. But these are some of the things that you can get to do flying in Arizona, which is absolutely fantastic. And again, is an experience that is once in a lifetime. But I've absolutely loved every flying second so far. It's fantastic. And I'm sure every course will be equally, you know, as fantastic. Flying in south of Spain, you've got cool mountain ranges and things that you can fly over. And you know, everything looks so different from above than it does from on the ground. So we often sort of fly over Phoenix and things, and then you drive through bits, and you sort of try to figure out if you've flown over it because it looks so different from the ground to the sky. But yeah, there's some highlights. But yeah, what I'll do now is I'll stop sharing my screen and I will go through some questions. So I think they're in the chat. I'll just have a scroll. There's quite a lot here, so I'll just go through and find some.
I think most of the Quake ones I've attempted to answer, Luke, just so you know, just save you a bit of time.
Right, okay. I'll skip past a lot of those then. In terms of, is it beneficial for becoming a pilot for Quake? Yes, absolutely. I had a lot of things on my CV from Quake, and also because the interview is an hour and a half, you've got a lot of time to fill. There's a lot of things that you can talk about in that hour and a half. So there's a lot of things from Quake. You can say, you know, oh, I know about air traffic control because I did it on Quake. Things that most people wouldn't otherwise have a sort of knowledge of. So yes, absolutely beneficial for becoming a pilot. I'm not sure how regularly ACPS applications come out. I assume probably every year. Would Quake be more beneficial than university? I suppose, yeah. I mean, it's sort of. I would argue yes. So obviously you wouldn't do them at the same time. I mean, you could do, but you could do Quake earlier, is what I mean. So you could do both potentially if you've applied at that young enough. But also, I would say yes. So it probably is in a way, because again, it depends on what you do at university. Obviously, university will give you so many transferable skills, but I feel like in a way ATPLs are sort of their own individual thing. So a lot of people have university degrees, but actually everyone is such a mixed bag because some people will be better at navigation, some people will be better at comms. So, you know, there's people that did like aerospace engineering degrees, but will still struggle with ATPL content. And you'll have people that don't have an engineering degree explaining things to each other. So it's a bit of a weird one, really. I think university probably is beneficial for sort of transferable skills, but it probably doesn't necessarily massively help with ATPL theory. But then again, you could also argue same for Quake in a way. You get the base knowledge, but because it's so much more in depth, they'll both set you up very well, but neither are going to make it a walk in the park, if you know what I mean. So in terms of A levels for commercial pilots, yeah, physics and maths are beneficial. So if you do physics, because physics and maths obviously will give you a really good understanding of physics and maths to a way greater depth than what you'll do in your ground school training and your ATPLs. So a lot of the training in ground school, a lot of the maths, sorry, is like GCSE level maths. So maybe like your 10, 11 level maths. So things like rearranging equations. Obviously, all of the stuff in ground school is calculator based. So obviously that makes it easier, because as long as you figure out how to manipulate the numbers, you then just stick them into a calculator and that works it out for you. So yeah, that's a lot better. But generally, yeah, I would just say do A levels that you enjoy. If you're going to do A levels, keep up with maths and physics. So obviously it would be helpful, because you would keep the skills going. But yeah, they're not mandatory. So when I applied for the easyJet course, there's not even an option to upload any A level certificates. So they actually would never know if someone hadn't got them. So just do what you enjoy. It would be probably my number one sort of advice for that. And I think most people would tell you the same. Just do what you enjoy, because it's not an easy thing to do. So yeah. GCSE options again. So I did triple science. So things like physics is really good, and obviously maths. But again, apart from that, just do what you think you'll be good at, and do what you enjoy, because they only need 5. So I did have the entry requirements on here, which you might have missed. So actually, I'll quickly go back and share my screen for that bit. Give me a second. So you need to be 18 or over by a start date, have the right to work in the UK or Europe, which if anyone has an Irish passport or a European passport, then you could also do the EU course. Because of the way sort of Brexit's worked, you can only get put on a UK license course if you're a UK passport holder. And then sort of if you got dual, you could go to Europe, as long as you get the right to live there. So I would have loved to have been based in like the south of France or something for a year or two, or somewhere like Germany or something, just somewhere a bit different. But unfortunately, because of Brexit, you can't do that anymore. So the license requirements have changed. So if you then wanted to convert your license afterwards, you would have to do all of the ground school exams again, which I won't be doing. So I'll just stay in the UK. But yeah, so that's that rule, which is a bit different now. So obviously everyone here, if you had a British passport or the right to live in the UK and work in the UK, then you would obviously just stay at a UK base. So this is the GCSE one. So you just need certificates that demonstrate that you've passed high school / secondary school exams, which is GCSEs. This is just copied and pasted from the easyJet requirements, by the way. So yeah, 5 is all you need, minimum to apply. So maths, English, and any science, which I think used to say physics. So that like you used to have to do triple science, whereas now it could be any science. So even if you don't do triple science because you don't like it that much, you just do regular science, then you still got sort of science GCSEs. So yeah, just pick things that you will enjoy and that you'll be good at. Be fluent in English, and then this is an Airbus specific one that you've got to be 5'2" at least, and to obtain a class 1 medical. So again, you do that after you'd applied. If you've gotten a place on a course, they're quite expensive and they're a unique experience. But yeah, so there's like 3 places in the country that you can get one, which is a bit annoying because being from the northeast, I had to go all the way down to Heathrow just to get my class 1, which was a bit of a pain because it was sort of expensive as it is. But yes, so that was the requirements. So it's not, you don't need any crazy GCSEs. So glasses affect being a pilot. You'd have to look for the specifics on the CAA website, but no, it doesn't. It doesn't just rule you out. So you have to have a correction between certain values or something. But there's plenty of people on my course and other courses that have got glasses, that use glasses, things like reading or whatever. or contact lenses. So yeah, one of my housemates actually either always wears contact lenses or glasses. So yeah, it shouldn't affect your medical unless you need a certain correction. So the easyJet Cadet program. So online there are accepted UK applications at the moment, but not EU applications. So if you are old enough and you want to apply, then that's how you would do that, just online. So I also had a slide on the application stage, which again I think probably dropped out. So let me just share that, and I'll quickly go through what it's like applying. So the application stage. So you send in your initial application, which is a CV, and then your supporting documents. So things like GCSE results and things like that. And they'll review that. And then once you, if you get invited to the next stage, that's the aptitude tests. So there's maths, there's physics, there's logical reasoning, which is a bit like there's different shapes, and they'll show you a sequence, and then you have to pick the next shape in the sequence. And I really hate that one. It wasn't for me. I spent a lot of time practicing online. There's free practice tests that you can do, and there's a lot of different jobs that will have similar sort of aptitude tests. But it takes a bit of practice because you've got to sort of train your eye to spot these things, which a lot of people wouldn't spot otherwise. But if you're good at that stuff, then it can be quite fun. And then there was also one that was called the FAST test, which was the hardest one. And so you could, for this course, you could buy a practice package that was basically sort of replicas and like different questions, but the same format. So you could practice the tests with the same format of what they would be before you did the real ones. So there was one called the FAST test that I remember thinking that I was going to absolutely tank, because you were in a 2D cockpit, and you would look out the window, and there would be a little screen in the corner that would be asking you quickfire questions. So things like, what's 10 times 10, or how many different yellow blocks are in this sequence, and then it would show you the whole sequence, and then it would bring up the answers, which doesn't sound too hard. They're pretty sort of basic questions, but then at the same time on the other side you've got a screen where you're playing a little mini game with your arrow keys on your computer, trying to fly. It's like it's a bit like Pac-Man kind of / Snake. So you kind of fly in this little plane in between these white blocks, and you try not to hit them. So you're doing that at the same time as trying to answer these questions, whilst also then having audio from like air traffic control played through your headset, which you have to listen to, because they'll ask you 20 questions at the end about what's happened during the flight, and you've got to like click buttons when things happen, and there was a lot going on in that. So that was quite a hard test, and that was a good one to have to practice from the company that do the tests, because then I sort of knew what it would be going into it. But that was a hard one. And then once you pass the aptitude tests, then you get invited to an assessment day, which is for you, like Air Cadet is fantastic, because there's a leadership task, a group task with maybe 7 or 8 people in it, and it's very, very similar to a syllabus leadership task that you would do in the Air Cadets. So that was good, because you'd had so much practice doing it already that it's like it can be just second nature for you, because you just go in and you do it straight away. So that's really good. And then a 90-minute interview afterwards, which again was quite long, but actually was quite nice, because it sort of flows a bit as a conversation rather than like a question and answer, and very formal. So that was quite nice. Things like the STAR technique, which you might have heard of for interviews. That's a really big one. So I wrote out a lot of examples and sort of practice things and really prepared for the interview, because preparation is key for things like that, and for that sort of interview. So that was the application stage. It's actually not as long as you might think, but each stage sort of has quite a few bits to it. So those are the 3 stages. Once you've done those 3, then if you pass the assessment day, you get accepted onto a course. So yeah, I got offered a place in June or July, and then didn't start till January. So there was quite a big gap, but so that's the application stage. I'll come back to some more questions. So yeah, if you join the RAF, can you go to a commercial pilot in the future? Yeah. So I know that airlines like British Airways have a military scheme, which I'm not quite sure what it is. I didn't look into it a lot myself, but I do know that obviously if you join the RAF as a pilot, I think the minimum service is 12 years. So you couldn't just join the RAF and then sort of leave straight away. I know you have to do a bit of time, but yeah, absolutely, you could be a commercial pilot afterwards. And I think quite a lot of people do that as well. It's quite a sort of, as you get older in your military career, quite a few people would move to the commercial flying. So there's obviously other programs like the Speedbird program, which is really good. The TUI program as well. So they're both fully funded. So they're very competitive, but they're very good. The easyJet course is partly funded, so it's considerably cheaper than a regular integrated course, but it's not free like the fully funded ones. And then you've got sort of schools like Skyborne, Leading Edge, and things that you can apply to do the training. So we train in a Piper Archer PA-28, and then we fly a Seminole after that, which is a multi-engine, and then we go into the Airbus A320. Yeah, my favorite part of the training so far is absolutely the flying, 100%. Like fantastic experiences through ground school, so many memories because so yeah, I sort of forget what I have and haven't said when I've been on the call. But yeah, so this year was a bit weird because we came to Phoenix in November, so we actually spent Christmas here. So we spent Christmas with, as a house, we met each other sort of less than a year before Christmas, and now we're the only people that we're spending Christmas with, which was a bit weird. So we did a house secret Santa, and we all bought each other a present and things. But that was a weird experience, but like a really good experience that like I'll remember for the rest of my life. And being able to go outside on Christmas Day and it'd be in 20s of degrees and sit and dangle your feet in the pool and things was a wild experience. Usually it's absolutely freezing cold, but that was really good. So yeah, that's probably one of my highlights. There's actually a lot of good things that come out of the training that aren't just about the actual flying and the training, because you make such good friendships and spend such a large amount of time around people that actually you get so many fantastic memories that sort of we would never have gotten otherwise, but actually aren't directly linked to the training. But yeah, the physical part, the actual part of the training would be the flying 100%. So flying over the Grand Canyon, that was probably my favorite thing to do. I'm not quite sure on specific skills for aerospace engineering, so probably not the best person to ask for that. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% certain on that one. The easyJet program, I just always wanted to work for easyJet. So this is a big thing with the airlines, is that they really want you to want to just work for them, not just be a pilot in general. So in your interview, they'll say, why do you want to be a commercial pilot? Or why do you want to be a military pilot? Not just why do you want to be a hobby pilot? Because they'll just say, well, you could do that and you could fly a Piper. So you actually really have to sort of reinforce that you want to work for an airline and that you want to work for that airline. So things like for the easyJet course, if you go on corporate easyjet.com, or I can't think that's sort of the website name, they actually have a lot of information on the airline and financials and things that if you learn that or make notes on that and you bring that up in the interview, that's the sort of things that they'd want to hear, and that you actually had a specific interest in that in that airline. Yes, so in terms of funding, this is a big topic, and it's kind of awkward because some schools will offer funding assistance and some don't. So CAE doesn't have any UK-based official funding assistance, but there is a company called Lendwise, which I would tell you to look into, that a lot of people seem to use or know about. And I think they actually can give you a loan that most banks will expect you to start paying it back straight away, whereas this company called Lendwise will actually have you pay it back once you finish your training, which can be really good because you don't get paid during training, so you can't pay back a bank loan. Most people won't be able to pay back a bank loan during their training because you're not getting paid. Yes, I would recommend the easyJet MPL. Like, learn about easyJet, look into it, make sure it's a company that you'd want to work for. But it's fantastic company in my eyes to work for. Really good airline. Lots of routes, lots of bases that you can move around between as well. I know Hannah Wells, so she's an easyJet first officer. She's doing a talk in, I think it's June or July. So she's really nice. She's one of the liaison pilots. So she actually works with us MPL cadets as well, and helps sort of speak to us throughout our training, make sure we're getting on all right, and answers any questions. So if you have any more questions about actually being a pilot, because obviously I haven't finished my training yet, absolutely then join her call in June or July, because she'll be able to give you more sort of post-training insight than I can. But yeah, I would recommend the MPL. And yeah, if you like gliding, then do it. Anything that you enjoy. If you enjoy gliding and you want to get your glider certificate and you want to become an airline pilot, then go and do it, because it's fun. There's a guy on my course that has a gliding certificate, and he does a lot of glider flying, and he really enjoys it. So yeah, should go for it.
Maybe your last one or two questions down, just looking at the time, that's all.
Yeah, no worries. Let's try and see if there's any different ones. Yes, I can probably put the slides in the chat potentially, if that works, or I can give them to Flight Lieutenant Russell, and then maybe they can be posted somewhere for you to access them, if that works. I'm not quite sure if that works. In terms of if you want the bullet points for things, yeah, I can absolutely give you that. And then what do you do at the National Air and Space Camp? So it's a week long, and there's a lot of different activities going on. So there's things like flight simulators, there's air traffic control, there's visits to different places, so Space Centre, things like that. There's a day where there's an air show. So there's lots of different aerospace activities that you can be doing, and lots of aerospace activities that you wouldn't get to do otherwise, outside of that sort of national level camp, which is really fantastic. And then the industry day, which is probably the highlight, because there's so many different companies and airlines and people with different career stories and things that you can speak to that are very insightful, especially if you're not quite sure what you want to do, but you know you want to work in aviation. Then you can go around and speak to them all day and get some fantastic insights. Things like British Airways are there talking about the Speedbird program. So if that's something you'd be interested in, that's really good, because you can speak to the pilots and things about that. So yeah, I would 100% recommend going to the National Air and Space Camp, because especially if you're interested in aviation, because there's fantastic things to do. And it's a camp that isn't really like any other camps. There's nothing like it in terms of tailored to aerospace in the Air Cadets. So yeah, 100% would recommend that. But that's sort of the quick lowdown of what you would do at the National Air and Space Camp. But yeah, I think that's probably it on the questions. There is you do also get some funny stories from sort of flying around. So we had one that we were flying to a place called Yuma, which is on the Mexican border, and we got there. So I flew down there. My flying partner was going to fly home, and it was just over 2 hours to get there. And then we landed, got some food in the restaurant at the airport, and it's actually a really cool airport, because it's like a military base as well. So there's F-35s and things that are taking off, and C-130s and F-18s. It's massive, really cool place. And we got back in the plane after having some food, and the GPS had failed. So the GPS had failed, and there's a traffic system in the aircraft, and that failed as well. So we tried to restart everything and see if any circuit breakers pulled and things like that, and everything seemed fine. So we spoke to dispatch back at CE and tried to see if they could send a plane out to pick us up, but they said they didn't have any planes to pick us up. So we were sort of in a bit of a pickle because we were quite far away from Phoenix, and we ended up having to get a rent-a-car from Enterprise from the terminal, because it's also got a little commercial terminal. And we have to drive 4 hours back to Phoenix and leave the plane in Yuma because it had broken. So yeah, that was a funny day out. And you get these stories as well from the flying that you can sort of look back on and tell people. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout the whole train. It's really interesting, and it's an experience that you'll never forget. So if you're thinking about it, 100% apply, and sort of, even if you get offered a place and then you decide that actually, like, you know, like so for the easyJet course, for example, once you get offered a place, you've got a year to start. So even if you think I really want to do it, but I actually want 6 months of doing something else first, you can apply and you've got a year until you have to start. So I didn't start until 6 months after. So yeah, it's a fantastic experience, and I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. But yeah, I think that's probably everything. If there's no more questions.
I think it might auto end anyway in a couple of minutes. So I just want to thank you for your time. Obviously, if anyone's got any specific questions, they could always send an email to stem.north, and that's my STEM email, and I can always pass them on to you, and you could maybe just do a bit of bullet points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right then. So thanks for your time, and continue to enjoy being in the US.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
it's quite sunny here actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be 20 degrees. I was like, oh, it's not bad for April, is it? But yeah.
No, definitely not. All right then. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone.
No problem. All right. Thank you.
Bye.